welcome to the Kevin Duragi Show. I'm your host, Kevin Duragi. Fancy that. I have a show named after myself. Boy, that sounds like I'm conceited, but it's really not. Just to remind you, we have three main tenants. The most important real estate is between your ears. Your personal drives your professional, and it's all about relationships. So I am excited today. We have our friend John Hickman from Nashville. Hi, John.
Hey there. How you doing?
Good. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, and Jake is here as well. Jake, how are you?
Good man. Good to be here.
Live from your home studio there in Kirkwood, huh?
That's right.
That's awesome. And John, we'll get to you in a second. But Jake, you had something really cool come up. What is the new doorward side here? What is your new facility going to be?
Oh, the mobile studio. Talking about the mobile man cave.
Yeah. What you got?
Yeah, we got a E450 shuttle bus that we're in the process of converting to a mobile studio, and so I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a really special place, just like the last studio, but now mobile.
Mobile. So theoretically, if John is in Nashville and wants to kick one of his events up another notch, who should he call for a studio that could be showing up?
John, I'm a text away. I'll show up in the mobile bus, and it's going to be awesome.
Here's my office manager.
Who's this, John?
This is Leroy. So I want to introduce him before he disappears.
Is that bad Leroy Brown? Is that
I named him after the meme Leroy Jenkins from World of Warcraft.
Nice.
I don't know if y'all are familiar with that one.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
That's that's the
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you about his name, origin then, I guess. But no, when I got him and his brother as kittens, he charged right out of the cat carrier after my cat that I have here, the cat that I had at the time, who outweighed him probably about 3 or 4 times at least at that point. And had no fear, just went right up to him. And I was like, well, your name's Leroy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah, and if this cat had opposable thumbs, I would be in trouble. I've seen him studying doorknobs and commode handles, and he's tried to paw at doorknobs and everything. So, thankfully, no opposable thumbs. So I'm doing all right.
Don't teach him that one,
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, John.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, Jake. Jake, thank you for the introduction to get to John. So, John, you run the Nashville REIA, is that correct?
Well, I'm a volunteer on the board there. I wouldn't say that I run it, but I'm the immediate past president of the Real Estate Investors of Nashville, which is the oldest REIA in Tennessee, and it's the oldest and largest, I should say. I do the guest presentation just to say, hey, folks, if you're already out here at the event tonight for our main monthly meeting, here's why you should join, and here's what you can get out of a REN membership. And been doing that, been enjoying doing that. And I've been a REN member since 2004, so almost 21 years now. And took a break in there a little bit, but I came back and volunteered big time. But REN is what really got me into real estate, in real life after reading some books. So
what books did you start reading?
Man, I was in massage therapy school, and I had a day off because I broke up with the girlfriend I had at the time. Went to go see a buddy who always had all these businessy books and finance books and personal development and everything, and I was never into that stuff. And then I was like, well, I'm up here, I got nothing to do. I'll just read one of these books. And I picked up a certain book that had black and purple and gold branding to it, and read that one. And I just devoured. And so I just started reading all the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. And what resonated with me is that it treated finance as a compounding pattern that I had already seen happen in computer games that I was pretty good at. I was like, oh, I can do money this way. I don't have to do, 40 for 40 for 40. I can, or have to get a big degree or anything like that. Not that I was afraid of academia, but I just was burnt out on it, and I was looking for a different path. And so entrepreneurship and real estate was that path.
Has it always been easy, or?
Oh, no, definitely not. I self-managed my rental portfolio for a while, and I can tell you right then that was not easy. And it's always a barrel of laughs when you open up a wall and you find many more problems in there than you thought you're going to have to deal with. So sometimes, to talk about mythology, it's like a rehab can turn into a hydra on you real quick. So that is, you talk about the school of hard knocks with commas and zeros in your tuition. There it is. So
You're paying for your lessons there.
One way or the other, you're paying one way or another.
All right, so tell me about some of these hydras. What one, I know what a hydra is, but if somebody doesn't know what a hydra is, what does that mean, and what does that mean in a rehab?
Sure. Well, a hydra in Greek mythology, Hercules, one of his 12 labors was to slay the hydra. And the thing about the hydra is, every time he would cut one of its heads off, thinking that, I've vanquished that part of it, well, two would grow back. And so now he's got two heads to deal with. And then eventually he stumbled onto the trick of like, well, if I burn the stump of it, then that head won't grow back. And so eventually I'll be able to vanquish this thing. And I would say in real estate, that has to do with, like I said before, projects that grow beyond the scale and scope that you originally thought that you had planned for, that you had budgeted for. And I would say the metaphorical burning of the stumps is to gradually improve and refine and update your to-do list, your inspection list, the things that you look for, because you might be looking ground level or just looking at the walls, as you walk in and see, oh, that's cool. But I learned in the past, oh, I should look up and see if there's any ceiling damage, literally. And I was like, oh. And so you just start learning more specifically other places and areas to look at and everything, and make sure you don't miss something that could bite you in the butt later. So
what's funny is one of the early houses I had under contract, I think I maybe did a handful of deals, but it was up in a part for us here. It's called Castle Point. It's not a great area, right? It's, closer to our war zones that we have. And I was walking through this house and everything's done. And the contractors, the previous contractors did a good job. And I just, when something is like, something's wrong, but you don't know what it is. So I did I called in a home inspector, right? He's just doing a walk and talk. I'm like, Wes, I'm missing something. What is it?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, your ceiling. It's that's not the ceiling. And the drywall was bowed. It wasn't connected. And he was just like, look, it's, so I think it was an old plaster that they just probably glued drywall up on, and it was all coming down. So I was like, and then there's a few other things that I was like, okay, that's what it was. It wasn't right. I ended up not buying that house, but it was like, okay, not everybody does it correctly, is what I'm learning.
Eventually you do, or you don't do it. You don't keep doing it. So yeah, it's funny you mentioned the bowed ceiling. I had a rehab that I did one time where literally there was a nice smile, where the ceiling met the wall, and the tenant had always said, oh yeah, that's just where I guess the previous landlord said that it had just been drywalled around the plumbing. I was like, it seemed like there'd be more of a box situation, not so much like a smile. And so luckily I noticed it, and we got into it, and sure enough, there were 2 layers of drywall, and it had been over time, it had just been caulked in place where it had already sagged. So it was being held up by a few really tired drywall screws and a bead of caulk, 2 layers of drywall. So that could have been bad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So you just all those kinds of stories. I've got a journal written somewhere, crazy stuff like that's happened. So, but I need to find that actually.
All right. Well, John, you read a book, right? Yeah. Massage therapy, broke up with a girl, picked up a book, got hooked, right? How did you get to your first deal? What was that? Were you trying to do a wholesale, a hotel, a rehab, a rental? What was your early strategy?
Well, I had heard about REIA and Real Estate Investors of Nashville even for a couple of years before I actually joined. I'm sure he's in your market, but Dave Ramsey, every now and then he would mention this real estate investor group. And, a couple of years before I'd gotten the idea, oh man, that'd be, because I'd fixed up a childhood home that my mom had at the time, and that had been deferred and had a lot of deferred maintenance and everything. And while working on that, she and I kind of had the idea of maybe doing this, buying a house and fixing it up and everything. And then I made the mistake of talking to a buddy of mine from high school. His dad was a commercial real estate developer. And he was like, oh, fixing up houses, man, that's a hard way to go. Oh man, you got to be careful. You can get really burned. and I listened to him for
Mm.
2 years. I knew about this organization, but I never went out and did anything to it. Well, after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, well, I at least need to go check it out, And so I did, and Jake will tell you, I rarely, dress up, and I even wore a suit when I went to, and I didn't look like this at the time, but I even wore a suit when I went to my first REIA meeting in August of 2004, and I was overdressed. Everyone else was hanging out and laughing and having a good time, but they were also throwing around a lot of terms and a lot of stuff that I'd seen read about that I read about in the book, like cash flow and asset value. And I was like, okay, so they're talking about the stuff that's in this financial game. Okay, cool, awesome. And I'd also started playing cash flow because the REIA at the time had cash flow game nights. And so through playing cash flow over the next couple months, met and developed some friendships with some good people. One of those turned into an eventual future business partner. But he and I, we met the same people who were mentors in our local group. And they you had like 10 courses that they would teach. And then if you wanted to, you could have the opportunity to partner with them on a deal. And so I was like, I want to do that. And that was a rehab. But if the opportunity that you'd find and that they had helped you vet, if that had become a wholesale, then you would split the profits on that. And that rehab was a very educational process. Let me put it that way. We thought it was going to take. Oh, well, I didn't know what I was doing, so it's kind of like being handed a manual for an airplane, and okay, go fly this thing. So, here's some guidance. We'll talk you through it on the radio.
Yeah. Landing sequence, go.
Right, yeah, or how you start the engine, but they brought the financing and deal, and then I did the elbow grease and project management. I thought it was going to take 5 months. It took 9. I thought it was going to take about $25,000 to work to do. For not counting holding costs, but the rehab budget and everything, took about 35, 36, something like that. So a little bit of a plus 50%.
That was plus your own elbow grease?
What's that?
And your own elbow grease?
And elbow grease, yeah. I mean, we were hiring contractors and everything, but I was doing all the finicky, like finish carpentry or like the specialized demo. This is some square footage that we thought we were going to get in one of the bedrooms. Turned out it was a brick chimney that had been plastered over. So I was like, well, that does what. But then I was like, aha, upcycling is a thing now. So I spent like a whole weekend with a little hammer and pick, chipping away all the plaster off of it, but then slathered up about 4 or 5 layers of shellac. And so now we had an upcycled brick wall in this house. So, talk about finding a silver lining. And then a lot of people liked it, actually, because I hung a couple of treatments on it and, made sure it was nice and safe and sealed in. But anyway, that we wound up going over budget. But the thing is everyone that walked into the house, they felt like it was almost a work of art. And yes, the Nashville market was pretty hot in early 2006 when this was going on. But I mean, we had multiple offers, and we had a full price plus some offer. We went on market on Friday, and then on Sunday afternoon, we agreed to a full price offer plus some, and it closed shortly thereafter. And so we actually made, for every dollar that we went over, we actually made almost $2, like, at least in cash coming back. I mean, when you figure in all your net proceeds and everything, it's still, it was about a break-even deal after all the expenses because of the extra holding time. But I was like, okay, I can do this. And then went into business with that friend I mentioned, and we built a pretty good a rental portfolio. So
you went from one flip to rental portfolio?
Well, yeah. I mean, my mentors at the time had taught me that you want to be able to buy in such a way that you have more than one exit strategy. So you're not having, oh my gosh, I have to sell this thing, can't rent it for enough, or I can rent it, but man, it just won't bring what I've got tied up into it or anything like that. So what would happen is, as we were leaning into the 2007, 2008 era, what was supposed to be like a $15,000 chunk of a rehab payday wound up being, a $300 or $400 cash flow instead. So, which is its own kind of both plus and minus, because we were kind of at the times like, man, sure could use that, $15,000 shot in the arm. Whew, I mean, 400 is great. Don't get me wrong, but it's easy enough when like you think those big paydays are coming in and then they don't, and then you're not upside down. You're still making money and staying afloat, but it changes kind of the trajectory of your business, when the plan A doesn't work. But thank goodness you had plan B.
So do you do, how do you get your money for deals? Is it hard money lenders, traditional lenders, private lenders?
Yeah, well, I've had a couple of wholesalers where they would go to, because we built up a good relationship through REIA and doing what we say we're going to do, which is hugely important, people listening at home. They would, one wholesaler would actually go to the courthouse steps, and then because we were on such good terms with him, he would actually finance straight to us. Like how much would you want for this? And so obviously he's getting it here. We'd be comfortable paying here, so he's making a spread there, and then he would turn around and finance to us, which is great. It's kind of a one-stop shop, but he wasn't charging, abnormally usurious rates. I mean, he was charged, he's in the business, you understand, but we were getting great properties. But in general, private money, I was doing BRRRR before it was called BRRRR, before it became a thing on podcasts.
So define BRRRR real quick so people get it.
Let's see, buy, renovate, rent, repair, repeat, which I think there's 4, or sometimes there's 5. But basically, you're taking a pile of money, buying an asset with it, improving the asset through forced appreciation, getting your money back out of it, and then doing it again and again and again. Ideally, taking on only a strategic amount of debt, not like a stupendous amount of debt.
Right. So you don't have to basically bring in the 20%. You're adding the equity side of what banks and whatnot are looking for.
Yeah, you're taking a dump and improving the tax base of the city one house at a time.
You gotta be careful how you're saying, like, oh, you take a dump and then.
Okay, well, you're right. You're right.
I think Kevin's a big fan of scatological humor, so yeah, he was like, is he going for that? Is he going for that?
My humor never really passed middle school, so.
Yeah, when enough people would ask me over the years, that kind of became my scripted response. Oh, what do you do? I was like, well, blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of hardwired in. Sorry.
I love it.
Oh, this is fun.
Cool.
All right, so now you own so you end up buying a portfolio with a partner. How did that relationship work? Was that all good, or?
Yeah, it was good. We complemented each other well. When it came to people and projects, he would usually defer to me unless there was just something glaring. And if there was something that glaring, I'd already caught it anyway. And then whenever it came to finance and juggling money, and he'd had been a realtor before, so he knew contracts. So we really complemented each other really well. In fact, during that first project house that I was telling you about, he had just bought a house and moved out of an apartment only 2 miles away. So many times after a long day of like chipping plaster, I would come over and take a shower at his place, and we would stay up all night talking about ideas and projects and funding, and coming up with spreadsheets with pro formas on it. It's like, man, if we got this many houses and did this, it'd be cool. We're like, I know, right? And so we just got fired up and went into it. And so as soon as I got done with that rehab, we went into business together. We had actually bought a course about short sales, and this was in January of 2006. Bill and Dwan Twyford, we bought their course and consumed all that material and everything. We tried to work short sales, but as a team, I remember sitting there reading the foreclosure section, and I was like reading out, and he would putting it in a spreadsheet and everything, and then we'd send out mailers. The market was still a little too strong for that. And so we decided to shift and pivot back to what was our bread and butter that our mentors had taught us, which is have at least 2 ways to buy and at least 2 ways to exit a property. And so we just went back to what we were doing. And then when the downturn hit, well, we had really had that machine going. We had good relationships with lenders, with contractors, and our own marketing going. So it was a pretty brisk time for sure.
Good.
Yeah. Jake, I don't know if that answered your question or not. So, okay. Yeah.
Jake, I got you here. You got a couple questions for John?
Well, I just was thinking, so that's like 2006 you're getting started?
Yeah.
So, obviously the elephant in the room is like 2007, 2008 is like right after. So, like, where were you in like the business when some of that hit, and like how did that shift happen for you? Like, I mean, how'd you get through that in a sense as a young investor with a young portfolio? Like, I'm kind of curious about that timing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy. Sometimes our occupancy fell as low as 70%, but because we've been taught to buy good properties on a good margin at a good price, uh, and not over lever, it was lean, but we were able to make it. And we did have to dip into some of our piles of cash for houses sometimes, to pay that and everything. And then we did the occasional wholesale to put that money back in. But came out of it, actually, I would say there was kind of like a lingering effect of about 2 or 3 years where having that extra debt that had piled up from having to dip into the reserves, that was, yeah, yes, come on, sorry.
Oh, is that our Leroy?
Yeah, he's back. He's made his round.
Leroy
Leroy!
Yeah,
Jenkins.
he's back. But yeah, so I would say that kind of complicated the balance sheet when it came time to refinance in 2012 and 13. He and I amicably divided up the company. He and his now wife are going to go off in a different direction, which is totally cool. We're still friends to this day, and we were able to navigate that. I mean, they went and did their thing and did well with it, and are still doing well with it. And I did my thing, and I'm still doing pretty good with it. So, but to ask how it navigated, I would say the biggest challenge was some of those piles of cash turned into solid debts. So instead of like an acquisition pile of cash, some of these REIA loans and other things that we had had a balance grow on them, and we weren't then able to go buy stuff, and that was one thing that kind of led to them going their way and me going mine. But then 2014 and 15 hit, and Nashville and real estate in general recovered, and so I sold a few houses, cleaned up the balance sheet, got into a better place, and still have a good portion of that portfolio today.
Wow. So do you switch your stuff into like commercial loans, or do you use like a long-term 30-year mortgages?
Well, around that time when I needed to refinance, there was a bank that was expanding into Nashville, and I got a really good rate with them. And so I had that financing for 5 years, and then went to a friendly local small family bank, or not family bank, but just a community bank. And then was there for a while, and then found a commercial broker. I was like, I'm just curious to see what my stuff is actually worth. And I was like, oh, it's that. Oh, so
Go on.
Yeah, exactly. But didn't go crazy, pulling equity out. But did that, and so I'm kind of in that cycle. About every 5 years, pulling just a little bit out, but not so much that like I'm getting upside down. So LTV is still really strong. Cash flow ratio is less than it was strong than it used to be here lately, because of I would say my biggest inflationary expenses increases have been insurance, and then repairs, and then in 2021 was a property tax reassessment in Nashville, and then we're getting ready to have another one this year. So I've got some soul searching to do, just because my insurance premiums went up 30% in 1 year, from 22 to 23. So you do enough of that, and you can have the best margin in the world starting out. And I also have a double whammy, because I like to charge a little bit under. I have property managers now, by the way, and they're awesome. That's a fun story too. But I like to charge. I would live in any of my houses, any unit in any of my houses, and I like to have them charge under market rent, 10 to 15%, because I want good people taking good care of the place. And so they want the same thing. They want good people there. They don't want to have to go out and remarket the property too. So I've kind of got the double whammy. I've got inflation making expenses bigger, and I'm also not scraping every penny out of someone's paycheck. So I would say I'm feeling the pinch just like everyone else is. But
Interesting technique there, because if people want to pay more, I let them pay more. I don't really tell them to go under. But
yeah, I'm not saying like definitely go under, but I was like, you can start under, and then we'll see where we're at. For me, having gone through the Great Recession, having a vacancy was one of my biggest expenses, next to having someone in there not paying rent and tearing the place up. So for me, having good relationships with people who really like where they're living, that has become super important to me.
Good.
So
I too had a reset. Partner and I built up a bunch of property. We decided to split. It's just part of the game, right?
Yeah.
You have dreams of all this grandeur, and 2 people, you think it's great. 3 people think, oh, it's great. We'll all do, it's great to get some experience, but I see it go two ways. One, freaking rocket ship, you get into bigger things, right? Because everybody's growing and contributing. Or two, just like you said, well, now we want to go a different way, or now I'm married and we want to do this with this.
Yeah.
Actually, I could think of some people we've had on here. They just sold off a portfolio they bought together. It ended up not really cash flowing. It ended up not doing all these things, but you hold on to it for 5, 8, 10 years. Now you're making a chunk of money when you turn around and sell that portfolio.
Yeah.
It's hard to look at this stuff, and it's taken me years for me, but they're just playing cards. Like, okay, I need some equity, or I want to move for me, I'm moving north to south. Great. I'm going to cash in my chips. I'm going to go over and now, just
do
treat
something
it
else.
Yeah, like, hey.
Yeah, you're literally doing something else now.
Yeah, so I actually just talked with one of when you have divine appointments, I don't know how you run your business, but part of my business is I call 2 friends a day, right? And I'm not like, hey, who do you think about for real estate? Oh, you should think of me. But it's more just like, John, how you doing, man? Like, what's up? How's life? It's just conversation.
Yeah.
And this guy happened to be a lender, and he reminded me, I love home ownership. I love having somebody become a homeowner. And it's like, oh my gosh. Like, I'm like, oh wait, one of my tenants want to buy the house they're living in. I should use, I should connect the dots. And it really kind of reminded me, like, hey man, like, I do like being the guy that helps people be an owner, because just kind of like what you said is like, I want somebody to have pride in their place.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I was sitting on my parents' steps, and it was post 9/11, right? And every house had a flag. It was springtime, so this beautiful red, white, and blue flag with a bright green. And I was just like, dude, this is the American dream. To say I own a piece of this, like, how awesome is that? I mean, now I own lots of slices of the American dream, but it was like, man, I really want to make that possible for other people. So do you still buy, fix, sell, and wholesale, or is it all rentals for you?
It's been a while since I've bought anything, mainly because I'm still in the old metrics, or looking at the old metrics that I got when I first was, coming up and learning and everything. And it's hard to find stuff that still fits that kind of gauge,
especially in Nashville, it's so hot. People pay anything for houses.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a while since I've bought anything, and mainly I've held off buying and adding to the rental portfolio, mainly because I'm not someone who thinks that more is always better. I used to, how many doors you got is like this big competition. Now it's like, I'm not, I'm kind of holding that, first of all, holding that to my chest, but also second of all, I'm not going to buy a house just to buy a house, because yes, each house is a chance to add a chunk of cash flow, but it's also an opportunity to write a check every month. And I would rather keep a tightly knit, tightly managed, well-managed in property or a portfolio that I know the history of, than necessarily buy new problems that I might be over leveraging on. So having nearly lost things twice, I want to try to circle the wagons as much as I can and have a really solid foundation. And that that's not necessarily a growth mindset, and that I'm fully convinced that has probably kept me from growing in other timelines. I probably have more houses and everything, but I'm not going to just do something to do something and jeopardize what I've built and maintained. So this is my own personal risk aversion, I guess.
I'm reminded, like, do you play poker? You familiar with Texas Hold'em?
Yeah.
So the idea of like the small blind, so you're already in the game, you might have a small stack. You don't have a lot of money or things. Shit, you got nothing to lose, really. Like, what are they going to come in and take? So that's, I think of like the small wholesaler. They're like, what, are you going to sue me? What are you going to take? Like, literally, I'm rented. I don't have any assets. And it's one of those, like, people are a little leery sometimes of assets and suing and stuff like that. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, we're business people. I could sue you, but if you don't have anything, it's not worth the money that I would spend to sue you. Like,
right. Yeah.
It reminds me of like the small blind. Like, okay, what do you want? It's really kind of just weird. But once you have assets, then it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. You're a little more cautious, I guess. Yeah, especially if you've been through the ringer a couple of times.
You said you twice with your portfolio. So once was your partner, you splitting, what was the second time?
Well, I mean, just mainly getting into. Well, the first time was just the scare of refinancing everything, about if those refinances didn't go well, if the appraisals didn't work out, that kind of a thing. And then the next time was some hijinks at a bank. Probably not going to go into detail on a podcast. No offense. But that was a stressful time. It was definitely a character defining time. Um, but talking about a gird your loins moment, kind of hold on for dear life. But I mean, just it was enough of both of those times were enough of an experience that I was like, okay, I don't want to lose my grandmother's house. I don't want to lose, you know, the portfolio that the stress of getting which gave me diabetes. I don't want to take two steps back when I've only managed to get one at this point. So now it's a few more steps, but so
So we've talked, so it's all about relationships, right? So
yes.
that's one of our things. Now, when I define relationships, it's relationship with yourself, relationship with others, and relationship with things.
Mhm.
And, looking at the life wheel, we've noticed like when you focus in on business or money, right? Those are relationship with things. Usually something else dips in or dips, like it's not always a perfect wheel. It's not always, easy like that. It's not always round. Sometimes you have to rob from one to spend more time. During your process here, have you noticed that in your own life?
Oh yeah. I would say during the economic downturn, I was super focused on business and everything. So I would say that that wheel that you gave us the metaphor for earlier had a great big old lump going towards the finances and the business side of things, and then the other sides were more deficient. And, I put on a decent amount of weight during that time, and um, relationships were okay, but that was also a very stressful time because my mom got sick and then passed. So
Oh,
my health definitely, took a beating, and as did some other relationships and everything. And then after she passed, I was able to kind of rebalance. Um, but I kind of think of it like having a certain amount of attention, energy to give to things during your day, and then also in your life. Like I think someone else I read on the internet, or some meme somewhere, like the spoon metaphor. Like I only have a certain amount of spoons, and it's like basically it's attention energy. It's another way of describing attention energy. And I would say I've had more energy go into like business and then finance, and then less into finding a relationship or having a family or anything like that. Uh, I'm when it comes to religion and spirituality, I meditate, and I feel like I try to infuse everything I do with intention and being present and energy and intention, rather than just kind of glossing over and taking it for granted that, oh, I can walk across the room, pain free, or it doesn't matter if I smile at this person or not. It's like, no, this person and I are meeting each other randomly on the street. I'm just gonna, hey man, how you doing? And I really mean it. It's like, and I had some fun conversations start that way. So I try to. That's how I get my balance there. But I try to be pretty well balanced overall. Like I think I remember from in the past when I've been so business and focus minded, and that was my businessy phase of life, as I described to my friends. I was kind of off kilter. Working 50 to 70 hours a week, and showing appointments, and working on houses and meeting people and everything. And then when I came out of that phase, I was like, how can we work smarter? How can we, rebalance things a little bit? And that was during that phase after that refinance that wound up going well, improved the cash flow. And I was like, okay, now I don't have to put my nose quite to the grindstone so hard, and we're going to make it and everything. So just, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I try to just make sure I try to make sure I'm balanced these days. So,
Is that when you picked up Krav Maga?
yeah, well, I did that. Uh, I've done that at two different phases. Well, three technically, but yeah, I picked that back up in 2022, about 3 years ago, mainly because I was like, it was another thing where I was kind of getting back into business, and I wasn't really focusing on my health, and I'm starting to get a little pudgy, and my doctor was unhappy with my numbers and on my blood work, and And so I was like, well, I haven't stuck with anything the way that I did Krav Maga. And so I checked them out, and they'd reopened a location back close to me. I was like, well, cool, I'm going to go check it out. Different instructors, different community, but still I was like, oh, I remember doing this, and just, hit the ground running. And
is that the one, is that like the Israeli military training stuff, like gouge out the eyes type
I mean,
defense?
pretty much, yeah. That's Krav Maga.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's a great workout. Yeah. And there's nothing quite like a stress reliever, like beating the stuffing out of a punching bag and just going to town. You don't have to hold back. The only thing holding you back is not hitting so hard that you hurt yourself. That's the only thing. So, but it's very cathartic. And so I would say that's added some extra emotional and mental balance to my life, not just physical balance.
You just got your third green belt?
Yeah.
Is that right?
So they do, each belt, there's many colored belts. And then the way that this school does it is you have to earn your stripes before you can, literally, before you can test for the next one. And so hopefully, well, the plan is, fingers crossed, get green 4 in June. And then in September, I think that the blue belt test is 5 or 6 hours long, where they have us grinding out different things and doing it. So I'm kind of, I've got my work cut out for me this summer to get back in shape and go after that. So
that's kind of fun. I was at a conference, and one of the speakers, I think they're out of Connecticut. Gosh, I wish I remembered his name. I don't. But it's a big, like, it's real estate investors, and once you hit a certain peak, right, you need to do so much volume. You come up, and like the way he starts it is like, hey, it's great to meet you. Punches him in the face. Like, all right. Like, oh shit. Like, it's one of those, like, if you learn how to take a hit or a punch, like, you'll be better suited in the business place, in the entrepreneurial world.
There's
like,
something to that.
That's his premise, right? Is, all right, I'm going to make you guys fighters, women, men, etc. But you need to learn how to physically take a hit, so emotionally in business you can take a hit and strike back in a sense.
And that's one thing that I really like about Krav Maga is they have this pyramid. So at the bottom, the foundation of the pyramid is having an attitude of survival and defense. And then the next section above the pyramid is fitness. And then at the very top is the technique. So whoever has the most killer instinct in a fight, provided they have the physical capability, is usually going to be the one that wins. So that the Krav Maga trains a lot of stress drills where they put you under emotional duress, and they don't really care that you do the technique perfectly in those stress drills. They just want to make sure you do something and you don't freeze. And I think it speaks to kind of what you were talking about with the other instructor about just getting after it and going after it and learn how to take a hit and keep going. And so that's been helpful for me.
Well, I'm thinking about my kids. So I have 3 boys, John, and 2 are in high school. 1 is a little younger, and we'll still kind of wrestle around and play. And it's one of those, like, one day they're going to be bigger. They're growing. So it's like, I still got it. I don't have all the techniques and whatnot. I just have weight and strength on them. But it's like, shit, one day they're going to learn how to do some of this, and I'll have to watch out. But
yeah. Well, but hopefully you'll be older and wiser and a little bit meaner too. So you'll have some of your own tricks.
That's right.
Skills.
All right, Jake, what do you got? What's the question?
Well, before, you guys were really, I think you both are people that really pour into your houses, but then you were talking about making sure you have a certain distance from them. Like, okay, I'm holding the cards to my chest, but they're just cards. And I think you both are kind of like board game people, so that's an interesting analogy. But like, how do you put that love into it? And I know, like, John, one of your mantras is really like leaving things better than you found it, leaving a situation better than you found it, etc. Like, how do you do that without having too much of that emotional connection to the thing, or like an unhealthy relationship to the thing? Would you say, Kevin?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, balance is tricky, in terms of relationships, but also in terms of that wheel. And I guess you have to have enough experience to know when is too much, like what is the precedent of oversharing or overgiving or to the point altruism to the point of self-harm. You kind of have to have enough, I think, experience, hopefully. I don't want anyone to get bit, but I mean, I think at a certain point in time, you realize how much is too much to give and overshare, and then how much is too little, like what's an appropriate level. And then you can always, each situation is going to be different. And so that's kind of how like for me, one thing personally is I don't loan money to friends. I will give you some money with no expectation, but I'm not going to loan you some money because that's bit me in the back in the rear a few times. So I've got a few of those. I'm not going to call them loans. A few of those gifts out now, and I've made sure to make sure that doesn't color the relationship. That like I mean, if you get the money and want to pay me back, I mean that's cool. I don't have an expectation of that. So I would say in the school of life and hard knocks and experience, that has been one adjustment that I've made just in that particular way. But I try to, tit for tat. If someone's pouring good energy into me, I'm going to give them good energy. If I can tell it's becoming a little parasitic, then I'm like, okay, cool. All right, I'm just going to moderate how much energy I give you, and we'll see. We'll circle back around in the future and see how that goes. So.
Yeah, that we do in our coaching. We call it the friend audit, but it's the idea. Think when your phone rings and a name pops up. Do they make you feel good? Or are you like, yes, it's John's calling, thumbs up? Or are you like, oh crap, it's John? Like, crap, what is wrong now? Right? Energy vampire type thing. Or is it like, oh, it's John, whatever, just a transaction, mid is the word.
I'm writing that down. A friend audit. Keep going.
It actually, I mean, Jake went through it. It is one of those tools like you don't realize, because we use the words like your network is your net worth. You become the product of the people, the five people who have the most. We use these words, right? But then we don't actually think. We talk about energy, right? Some people build us up where you're like, yes. Remember, like you and your partner in the beginning, like, oh my gosh, make the spreadsheet. Let's do it. Yes, this is gonna be awesome. Where you're building up, and it's those two sparks that make a fire. And then other times you're there and you're just like, oh my God, he keeps talking. Like you feel when you get done, you're like, I need to take a nap. This dude wore me out.
Yeah.
And it's one of those like, who are you keeping around you? And if you're getting calls that are mids to downers, it's like, you know what? Like, I need to check in still with this person because sometimes it's family members, sometimes it's. But you also can start saying, you know what? They're going to become a 5-minute friend, not a lunch friend. They're going to be a 15-minute, walk with a friend, not a let's spend the weekend together. Like, okay, I will manage my expectations of, I just don't have time for that all the time. I have to make sure that I'm being fed.
I get it. I've done that much that same process. Then that was a really good way to call it the friend audit.
I should have a coaching program.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm also not that person to other people. I like to make, as Jake mentioned, I think one of my purposes in life is to help every person, place, or thing that I come across be improved or bettered some way. Not against its will, but just I try to just leave things better than how I find them.
I think that's that's the Boy Scout motto, isn't it?
Basically, yeah.
But I would say, one, Boy Scouts has changed, but the ideas really are good things. And I try, again, I have boys, but it's one of those, I don't think you realize how much people are watching you. We're leaders, right? And, in the REIA, and, the people are watching. It could be the people at Home Depot. It could be the title companies that, they watch the way you do it.
Yep.
Ethan, my middle kid, I held the door open at some arbitrary place, right? For some people, it was at Quick Trip or, like just gas station. We picked up some hot dogs. That's one of their favorite lunches, right? After church, they'll get their taquitos or whatever. They're like, this is awesome, Dad. I'm like, all right, we can do this. But I held the door open and Ethan saw it and he was like, man, you're like the OG of kindness. I was like, I'll look up what OG means, but, but it is one of those, like, people are watching in the business space. It's almost, we have a weird fascination in America, I think, that we like seeing people rise and the good people get up high. And then we also love to tear them down, like think of who are some, like Michael Jackson. Man, we're all pro Michael Jackson. Go Michael Jackson. You're awesome. And then we're like, that dude's weird. Like we're also rooting for him to fall down. It's just kind of weird how fickle we are sometimes as a society. But
Yeah.
have you noticed anybody watching you or following you in basically your leadership?
Well, I've noticed that on in the personal realm, and it wasn't just when I was having a down in the dumps moment and a buddy was building me up. Some different friends have said that, like, a lot of people. I don't want to be pretentious and look, but they said that they do kind of look up to me, and then, like, whenever some things went down with a friend, it kind of affected me negatively. Like, I was just, I was kind of disappointed in what he did. And the guy said that, when we eventually talked it out, had a couple beers and talked it out and everything. And he was like, I'm not happy with what I did and everything. But he's like, the thing that hurt the most was disappointing you. And I was like, whoa. I was like, well, I wasn't trying to be hard. But I was like, but you got to realize, like, I'm not going to associate with certain people that do certain things or are a certain way and everything. He's like, I know. And that's why I realized what I'd done and everything. And so I'm trying to make it up, make it better. And I was like, okay, all right, well, we can work with this. And so he's been a good friend to this day. So, but that kind of took me off guard, because he was like, he was talking about a lot of people in that same friend group feel that same way. And I was like, really? I don't think they don't like me, but I was like, I'm not looking for that. So I don't expect it when I get it, if that makes sense. And then in the REIA, yeah, I mean, at my REIA, one of the stories of my guest pitch that I share, and I say guest pitch, that's kind of a negative salesy thing to say about it, but it's a guest presentation about why you should join REIA, all the benefits that come with membership. One of the stories I tell is from that first rehab. The carrot that got me through finishing that rehab was basically that I would finally have enough money to buy my first fancy kilt, that I could wear around and everything. Because I used to work as a stagehand while I was going to massage therapy school. I worked as a stagehand and did rigging work. And there was a stagehand one time who had a kilt and everything, and he was always pulling stuff out of his pockets. I mean, I couldn't believe how much he was, how much he could store in that thing. I was like, man, I want one of those.
In the kilt, he's
kilt. Oh yeah, pliers, wrenches, hammer, staple gun, a roll, like a small roll of gaff tape, tie line. I mean, this thing had pockets for days, so it made him more productive. And it looked kind of cool. Yeah, his name was Doug. He had a skullet. It was the first time I ever met a guy with a skullet, so that was pretty cool.
Okay. What's a skullet?
Well, skullet is what I'm working on, where this thins out and you keep long hair in the back. It's basically a mullet, but it's basically shaved on top. But Doug was super cool, and I was like, man, I want to be like Doug. Doug is awesome. But I looked up how much they were, and I was like, oh, I can't afford that on stagehand salary. Fast forward to when I'm doing this rehab, and I was like, it was 20 hours days for like the last month, or for the last like couple weeks before the thing had to get on the market. My partners were like, ultimatum, you have to get on the market at this time. So I was grinding, and for some reason it popped into my mind. I was like, I know, when I get my money back out of this deal, I'm going to buy myself one of those kilts I've been wanting for like 3 years. And so, sure enough, I did. And because I wear the point of this is I wear a kilt to all the REIA functions and meetings and everything. And so people know to look for the kilt guy. And you're like, oh, is this your REIA? And I was like, well, I'm on the board. I'm the recent president. I was like, it's not my REIA. It's ours. What can I help you with? But, they're like, oh, well, someone said to go to the REIA and look for the guy in the kilt. He can help you out and get you hooked up. And, he's got all the answers. Like, whoa. I'm just a human muddling my way through this best I can. So, anyway,
you actually just nailed. So I do this talk about networking, and one of my points is be memorable. And wearing a kilt makes you be memorable.
Yep.
Unless you're at a kilt convention, right? Then maybe not wearing one would stick out. But
right. Wear a Speedo there.
But it's the idea, like, that's the guy. Watch him.
Yeah. So I'm one of those guys. There's a guy who he's a savant when it comes to real estate, named Sam Worth at my REIA. Y'all are probably 1 or 2 degrees away from knowing him besides me. But so he's the guy in the hat. I'm the guy with the kilt, and people just I guess because there's not a mythos, but there's, I guess there's reputation because I've been around REIA for so long, and we've got our main executive director, and then there's me, and then there's Sam. There's lots of other volunteers, but I guess we're the ones that people know to look for, and help you get answers from, and that kind of a thing.
See, talk about being a leader, being in front. People are watching.
Yeah, a lot of times,
right?
With nonprofits, it feels like if you line up all the volunteers and everyone else takes a step back and you forget to get the memo to step back and you're the one left standing in front. Yeah, exactly. That's happened to me in 2 different nonprofits, but I was like, well, if not me, then who? So I'm just going to do what I can. I'm going to sink my teeth into this and shake it for all it's worth. So
good for you. Jake, I don't think I told you this, but it was actually at our high school prom. I was the only guy who wore a kilt. I ended up having a great time. It became quite memorable. Unfortunately, no pictures exist. Oh, shame.
What? Come on. That is a missed opportunity.
It's a great conversation starter, though, so I'm glad you had a good time.
It was great, but I didn't.
Did you do any, William Wallace, Braveheart type? So
it was actually just post.
Okay.
It was post Braveheart. So,
oh wow!
I used to run cross country. We would do the blue face paint before we'd start running.
Whoa!
Wore the kilt there, and I actually taught myself. Do you remember the movie Babe, the one with the pig?
Yeah.
So in it, the farmer does a jig. So I learned how to do a little jig from Babe. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Be memorable.
That's great.
I have since forgotten that. Now Now my wife goes like, "Oh my gosh, he's dancing again!" Like, it's good to find balance on these things.
Yeah.
So John, through this process, right? It looks like you were by yourself. You got into the space. You built a portfolio. You adjusted. You partnered. You built a portfolio. Like this ebbs and flows. Like, do you have any advice to give people who are going through this journey? Like, what advice would you have needed going through and hearing some of these things?
Oh my goodness, I don't know where to start. I would say the advice from my mentors is a good one. Have at least more than one. Have at least 2 ways of buying a property, and at least 2 exit strategies. And 3 if you can include wholesaling. But don't be locked into where you have to desperately do one exit strategy in order to succeed with the opportunity. That's one, I would say. And then get really good at least 2 of those. Well, get good at like a couple of ways of buying, you get good at a couple of ways of selling, and then if need be, you can get the expertise you need for the other way of I say selling, exiting it. Whether it's seller financing or renting or wholesaling, retailing. Just get to know your numbers. And I would say be honest when you're working your analysis. Don't make the numbers rosy just to try to do the deal and force the deal. The ones that have wound up biting me in the past were ones where I usually fudge to try to make something happen. So don't do a deal just to do a deal. Just listen to your gut. I would say that's a very good, kind of like you with that ceiling. You knew something was off. I would say pay attention to that, really lean into it. If something doesn't feel right, it could be that you might pass on the opportunity and then it bites someone else. Not that you want them to get hurt, but you may have go there, but for the grace of God, now I don't have to deal with like a septic tank that fell in on the front yard, like I almost had to.
Oh.
Yeah, something was just not right about that house, and so I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, so
people think the investors are always the crooked and bad people, but man, some of these sellers. Dude, they'll say anything to sell their house. They'll, oh yeah, no, it's fine, nothing's wrong, and then it's like, no, you did a lot of shoddy things here.
Yeah,
like you set the table for a freaking Kinderbox for us to walk in, and everything explodes.
Yeah, or like in that case, oh yeah, it's always been hooked up to the septic system or the sewer system. There's no septic tank here. Oh, really? It's kind of an older house. Well, yeah, yeah, and then come to find out, the top of the tank collapsed. After someone else bought it. So I was like, So if you, I would say as aggregate as many, if someone's looking to get into rehabs or wholesales or hotels, something like that, or really any of it, I would say aggregate as many different inspection lists as possible, but don't be paralyzed by them. But every time that you miss a nuance or something, to like, in your case, oh, I should look up and see if the ceiling is smiling. Okay, that probably became something that you would check from then on, afterwards, and on every property. Just start adding those things that you come across experientially, and don't just take someone's book list, but start adding in the stuff that you've learned. And I think you'll get to where you can work that list and analyze a property really quick. And if someone has a financial analysis spreadsheet, see if you can trade them for it. I mean, like, don't just like, ooh, let me have your sheet, because they could have been working on that. See if you can provide some value to them and make it symbiotic, not just gimme, gimme, gimme. And I'd say that's another thing, is see what else you can give to someone else to try to make their real estate journey better. Because if they're going to give you the time and effort and energy of like a lunch where you can shorten your learning curve, I would say, well, what can I do for you? And you got any junk you need hauled, or need me to come help you with something? Just try to see if there's some way to really build that relationship, so it's not just a one-off coffee meeting where you're trying to pick their brain. See if you can really build a relationship.
How many people reach out to you, John, and are like, hey, can I buy you a coffee? Can I take you to lunch? I just need to pick your brain.
Yeah.
You get a lot of those?
Yeah, a fewer of those now, because I've had my coffee bought for me, and take 2 hours of my time, and then the person winds up not ever doing a deal, and it's not that I'm like, oh, my time is so valuable, but I was like, I could have been hanging out with Leroy here at the house watching something, instead of this, where it's someone who I never hear from again or see it around REIA or anything like that. And it's about pouring into each other. And and this is a boundaries thing, Jake, to your point. This is I don't really do coffee anymore. I make it symbiotic, like, okay, well, can you come help me work on something? Oh, I kind of, yeah, you find out who has the spine quick. Yeah.
I remember when I was recruiting some of my early students, I didn't go meet them for a lunch or any of those things. It was, I'm working at this rehab. You want to get into this space, why don't you come talk to me here?
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, this is what you want, isn't it? Let's skip that. Put on some work shoes. Let's go. Like,
yeah.
You want to do something? Let's go. Jake, you've been over to a few projects.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Jake, you got a final question?
Well, I've been waiting for you to pull out the forging moment question. I'm kind of excited to see just how he would answer it. Kind of the theme of the year, right?
So Eads Bridge was the theme of the year that we did this year, John. So there's 3 parts to it. Eads Bridge is what connected east to west, right? It's the bridge here by St. Louis. I did a talk on it. It was 30? Was it episode 30? Something like that. Anyway, it's brilliant. But the concept is dream, forge, finish, right? So dream, have that vision. What is it that we want to do, right? You didn't say it explicitly here, but you're getting into real estate. You're leaving this. You're going to build a portfolio. You're going to blah, 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 blah. Forge is that moment where it gets hot. There's a lot of pressure. Because in the Eads Bridge example, the building material at the time was iron, wood, and stone. And to expand was it a mile bridge over a fast current river that had to be tall enough for boats and all the rigmarole that bridges needed for this, right? The material at that time couldn't do it. And the secret there was making the iron into steel. Steel could handle those things. So then the question is for you as an individual, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, right? As a landowner, what was your forging moment that you had to upgrade as a character, right? Iron was no longer sufficient. You had to be steel. You had to be stronger. And then what was that moment for you?
I would say that moment for me was getting the refinances done that I got in 2013. My business partner and I, we amicably started parceling things up in 2012. But in 2013, I had 22 mortgages coming due for refinance. And so just starting to kind of find where I was going to get those refinances done with the kind of the lots of equity, but shoestring of the thin veneer of cash that I had on hand. Found this bank, and this bank had heard that I was, it was a mutual finding, a mutual discovery. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to step my game up both in terms of like presentation and communication and analysis and being real, but also putting my best foot forward. And it was about a 4-month process of getting that refinance done because I had a number more properties at the time. And that was a very forging moment. And I remember there was one meeting where I was basically pitching my deal and myself to not just the loan officer and the vice president that was working with him, but another couple of vice presidents, because I was bringing enough of an opportunity for them that it was going to move the needle on their business here in Nashville. And so I remember moments in that meeting where just like all the saliva in my mouth was just like, wicked away, and I could hardly, starting to sound froggy and everything, and just having to kind of like do an internal like Tai Chi, kind of like, I'm just going to be zen in the moon here. I'm just going to just breathe through it and, cool, calm, and collected. And I think that helped. But also they said that all the prep work that I'd done, the data analysis and presentation, the spreadsheets that I built they were positive, but they weren't rosy, but they were real. And I think they respected the reality, how honest I was, but also how in depth I was. And so they said, okay, well, if this guy is going to be this honest and this in depth, then we can trust future financials and what he's going to say and everything, and that we're getting what we're lending on here. And so I would say that was a very much a forging moment, was having to pull all that together, because that was, I'd signed off on loan documents before, and we'd looked at spreadsheets and everything, but I'd never had to like marshal everything together, pull the QuickBooks reports, get all that, together. So that was me, instead of me juggling my usual stuff, which is people and projects. I was like, okay, well, throw this extra ball, and now I'm doing everything, So I'd say that was it for me.
Yeah, that sounds like I remember people think some of these refis are like, oh yeah, here it is, it's done. It's like, no, this is a process. There's a lot of back and forth and asking for this and that, and
dotting every I.
And you're exposed. Like, it's the time where, your kilt's up. Okay, you good?
Here's what's on offer.
Yeah. Trying to tie you in here.
Yeah, I like it. There's a theme. I like it. Yeah.
All right. So, John, I want to, okay, I'll have 2 questions here. So first one is one that I care about. So it sounds like you're a fan of games, strategy games.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite board game?
Well, aside from cash flow, I mean, that's a given. Right now, I would have to say it is a game franchise, I guess you could called Zombicide, which is a cooperative game. So rather than competitive, it's cooperative. So there's a theme.
Like a pandemic type game?
Yeah. So it's basically everyone's working together to defeat a zombie onslaught. And so it's there's multiple like skins of it. So one of them is like the modern world. One of them is like a fantasy setting with dragons and monsters. And then there's a Marvel one too, where you can be Marvel superheroes, fighting off a zombie horde. So I'd say that one is my current favorite. Yeah.
What is that called?
The franchise is called Zombicide.
Zombicide.
Yeah, Zombicide. And there's a Wild West one that I have it. I just haven't played it yet. So it's great. Yeah.
So my franchise, like your Zombicide franchise. So I love Axis and Allies. Like, I'm a history buff. Like I like apparently ruling the world or something like that. But that's just my gig.
Yeah, sure.
And Jake, what's your fave?
I'm a huge Ticket to Ride fan. I just like that whole franchise is like, I just can't get enough of it. I played Diplomacy though successfully on Saturday. I was mentioning to you, Kevin. I didn't win, but we didn't actually finish. And I also didn't lose any friends, so I think that was a win. So.
That is, more than any game, I think that is probably the worst game if you want to keep the friends that you have.
That sounds like Settlers of Catan as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. But Jake, we've played a Ticket to Ride. Do you remember who won? Because I do.
No recollection.
Yes. All right. So, John, in this career that you've had, right, spanning over COVID, spanning over the Great Recession, spanning this length here, if you could boil all of your experience into like some advice to give somebody, or a quote that kept you going, or a poem or a thought or an influence, like if you could sum up this great experience that you've done, this great journey, what advice or what quote would you offer?
Oh my goodness. Well, for someone getting started, just coming out of high school or whatever, I would say that there's many more opportunities and alternatives than just going to college or tech school. I mean, those are great, but just keep your eyes open. There's opportunities for all kinds of adventure and not excess, but experiences. It doesn't have to just be, the formula that we're told, which is, either college or go tech, anything like that. For real estate, I would say know your numbers and be honest and treat everyone like they could be your next lender. Because they could be. They could be.
Excellent. Well, John, I have to admit, great chatting with you. Jake, thanks for jumping on, doing a dual
unexpected surprise. I wasn't expecting to be here, but
so apparently I did some bad hosting on previous ones, so Jake came on to correct me. But I'm glad you stayed in. It was fun. It was fun to meet you, John. It was fun to have you, Jake. So again, thanks everybody for watching and being a part of our show. I am actively going in a series of being more active on the socials. So if you want to continue the conversation, meet us either on Facebook, Instagram, or on YouTube. Actually, and LinkedIn. We're there too. So, who knew? Who knew?
Be up there.
Sounds good. So, guys, thanks for being with us. John, thanks for being here. Jake, thanks for being here. And thank you to all of you for continuing to love and support us. So thank you, guys.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
See you later.